Hello, everybody. I caught a lot of slack for not finishing my story. I got people reaching out to me saying that they were waiting for the second piece. So I felt really bad, you guys. I had a lot going on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and finish up my story, my codependency story, and how that began. So I thank you all for being patient with me. So here we go. Girl meets boy. I take him up on his offer and we run off with me and him. And it wasn't some fairy tale that he promised me. He promised me a lot of things. He promised me that we would be whisked away and we will love each other forever. But instead, I ended up with him in an old shabby 2-bedroom apartment in the projects where we lived with him and his mother and his father. His mother was a diagnosed schizophrenic and his father was on drugs. And he ran that house. He was the only child. He was the golden child. And it was just me and him, really, to rely on each other. He began to implement his narcissism tactics very quickly by telling me that my mother never loved me and by putting me in a situation that I had to rely on him, and for also putting me in a situation throughout my whole entire life for helping raise my siblings. And then he also used the fact that I didn't have a father present in the home. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have been able to be whisked away by some man. I thought that to be very odd. He wanted children very quickly, and although I tried to hold off because I'd never really seen me having children, you know, you're young and you think of long trips, hanging out with your friends, you know, getting a good job. You don't really think like, wow, 16? And now we're talking children? And no matter how long I held off, I ultimately got pregnant at 17. And now here I am, pregnant, no family to rely on anymore besides him. And there's my life. The first time he put his hands on me was when he invited one of his girl cousins who just loved to fight, and she just loved a good confrontation, and he persuaded her through enough manipulation to call me out of my name and start to taunt me. I think he wanted to see where my snapping point is, because I was always just a kind person. I was always a loving person. I didn't really have an aggressive bone in my body. I shied away from violence. I shied away from confrontation. So it worked. You know, I'm a fire sign. Ultimately, if you back me up in a corner, I'm coming swinging. And I went for her, and he grabbed me and he choked me and he slammed my head up against a wall. That was the first time he put his hands on me. Eventually, I guess that was like the first taste of blood, you know, like how a savage or an animal have their first taste of blood. They want more, and he started to put his hands on me often. Even while I was pregnant, which was crazy. I can recall where he would have this thing where he would pull my hair. I mean, he would do just a quick yank towards the floor, like he would wrap his hand at least one time in my hair in his hand at least one time to get a good grip, and he would snap down very hard. And I had long, pretty hair, and I used to feel like the muscles in my neck snapping, and it would scare me. I would say, he's gonna break my neck. So I cut off my hair. There was no way I was going to give him leverage over me. I mean, I literally chopped it off. And then he started to call me names. He started to say I was ugly because, you know, he loved a girl with pretty hair. And I was starting to gain weight because of my pregnancy. So he would call me fat. And now he was calling me ugly, bald-headed B, ugly B, fat B. You know what the word is, that B word is. And I just felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. It was almost like I was catatonic. It was like I would stare off into space when he was assaulting me verbally, not really able to defend myself at the time. Eventually, I had my daughter, and she was a beautiful little baby. But every bit of energy, and she was his little princess. But he didn't raise her. He raised me. He loved to get, to make her feel good for her bad behavior. So if she tore things down or she made a ruckus, it was fine by him. He thought it was adorable. So he rewarded bad behavior. And if I would try to, discipline her for bad behavior, say things like, no, put that down, don't touch that, I would get disciplined for that. There's no way I can say anything to the children that, he made in his eyes. I was less than the dog pet in his eyes. I was just a vessel for having children. Eventually, he started to cheat. He would openly flirt with women in my face. He would walk. He was working in the train for the airport at the time, and I would run into him walking a woman or two home from work, because they would work at the same location, and he would walk them home. And then he ultimately came home and brought me an STD. I remember going to the doctor. I didn't feel right, and they diagnosed me with an STD, not a terminal one, but then it was just enough information then for me to realize that he's openly having unprotected sex with women. We fought about that. I mean, just for me bringing it up, it was a fight. Over the next 6 years, after that, it started to get really, really bad. My daughter was growing up, and now I'm starting to feel better because now she's getting older. I landed me a great job, and I was getting out the house more, meeting new people. And this is where he wanted to start to tie me back down again. He didn't want me to get out there, meet new people. So he started to become very possessive. He would need to be there to pick me up from work. He would watch and see if I made any friends. He would kind of assault any person, a guy friend who he thought he see me talking to at the location. He would kind of stalk me. He would walk into my job, and if he seen me smiling with anybody that was of the opposite sex, he would pretty much come up to them and try to assault them a little bit, verbally assault them, try to scare them a little bit. So that was horrible. So I started to feel myself. I got in school. I said, I started to lose my baby weight, and I'm feeling really great. And he wanted to now start to implement more children into the equation. He found my birth control and got rid of it. And I remember him getting another woman pregnant. This was the worst years of my life at this time. And he triangulated between me and this woman. This woman was a little bit around his age, so she was a lot older. And she actually called me one day and told me that she was pregnant. And but he would not allow me to leave the house. I wanted to leave. I'm like, run off with your new girlfriend, have this family. But ultimately, he had forced her to get an abortion because he wasn't going to leave me alone. Why would he? I'm great fuel, right? But she was just a catalyst to make me feel bad about myself. So we had for at least over a year, me and this woman going back and forth, him giving her the impression that I didn't want to leave the home, but him chasing me all throughout the city when I'm trying to be with friends or family to get away from him. And he was such a tyrant that ultimately they would always put me out, like go back home to him because he's stalking my house or he's calling our house too often. It was just cruel, and I would go back. And me and this woman actually got pregnant around the same time. So I was pregnant at the same time she was pregnant. So she got an abortion and I had my second daughter. Those were trying times. But then I started to find my voice. I was getting really angry with this man. Like, now it's no longer where he's beating me. This is a fight to the fittest. It's me and him going blow for blow, swing for swing. And I started to realize that he enjoyed that. He enjoyed the fights. He really, really loved it. He loved getting me worked up, and then he loved me striking back, and he loved just those brawls. I was going to work and I would have glasses on because I would have big bruises on my eyes, and I was losing jobs left and right, and nobody really cared or understood. I mean, I didn't say much, but clearly I was in an abusive relationship. People just would shy away and ultimately feel like they need to just mind their business. But in between that, I end up pregnant again 2 years after my second daughter, and I had a son. And I was devastated because now I'm a mother of 3 and he's telling me, you're never going to be able to find nobody. No man out there in the world would want a woman with 3 children. You're stuck. You have to stay here. I have to take care of you. And you're my headache just like I'm yours. And we're just going to be unhappily in love forever. And it's just what it is. And I just didn't find that to be feasible. It didn't make sense to me. I had enough. I remember I left him and he was so devastated, and you could clearly tell I was not going to go back. I was just upset, like I couldn't do it. And he made a promise to me that he would change. So I told him, let's go to counseling. That's the only way I would come back. And he tried it. He said, okay, let's go. And we found this location an hour and change away from where we lived. And we drove all the way out to this place, and he went in, and as soon as we sat down with the therapist, he just said hello, she said hello, and then he got up and walked out the room. Like nothing, and then turned around and said to me, if you don't hurry up in this car, you're going to be stuck out here. I was devastated. Before I walked out, she took my hand and she said, I would like to talk to you by yourself when you get a chance. And I said, okay. So I left. And we went home and we had the worst fight. He tried to literally kill me because I had the goal to push in his head that we should go to therapy when therapy doesn't help people in our position. And I was like, that is so manipulative. What in the world? Ultimately, me and her started having these private conversations through phone. And then a couple of times when I was able to get a ride, I would go out there to see her. And I went out there to see her as well, and eventually she brought it up. She brought up the word codependency. And she started to explain to me everything and how it looked. You know, how a person can have these childhood traumas that can lead to them just, accepting these type of relationships, and for that person to normalize it. And it made sense to me, chasing the idea of love, and sacrificing myself to the point where it was almost dangerous for me just to make things work for children or my children so that they can have this father in the home, because I'm pretty much trying to chase or to just reinvent that missing father that I yearned for as a child. It made sense to me. So I started to get a little strength. I started to say, you know what? I have to do something for me. I have to become happy. My children are getting a little older, and it still took some time for me to leave that relationship. Now, quite a few more years had passed, and what really, the fight that broke the camel's back in a sense was I had went out and I purchased me my own phone, because previous to that he would have to buy all the phones. He would buy the cell phones and he would track conversations. He would get printouts of my text messages. He would question phone numbers that stood out to him. So he would get the printouts of all the numbers that was dialed through that phone. And I got tired of that. I wanted to be able to reach my family. Like, he really, separated me from my family, but I started to restore those relationships. I reached out to my mother, I reached out to my siblings, and whenever he was at work, I would start to go to see them and spend time with them and hug them and embrace them. We're older now. Let's reinvent our relationships. Let's start new. And we missed each other immensely. My mother was so apologetic about me getting into a situation like that. She cried for me. She didn't want to see me in that situation, and they strengthened me. Family literally strengthened me. And he knew that. So he was getting very, very possessive, even more than he ever been. And I purchased me a phone. And my kids were a little younger at this time. My son was probably around 6. My daughter was around 8. And my oldest daughter was 11 or 12, 13. I can't really recall right now. And I remember him finding my phone. I put it in my son's room, in his drawer, underneath his pajamas, and I tied the cord around it, and I would only use it when he wasn't home. And for some odd reason, I don't even know why, it just still mind boggles me to this day as to why he looked for that phone and even found it. And I can recall him calling me into my son's room one evening. My son was asleep, and he said, you mind telling me what this is? And it was my phone in his hand. And I said, let me get that. And he was like, no, and we struggled over that phone. And we fought in that room while my son is sleeping. We had a silent fight. I'm talking about pulling and tugging and ripping. My son didn't even stare. He managed to get the cord around my neck. And I thought my life was over at that time. He really was tugging. He got the cord around my neck, and he was literally pulling and tightening at every time I made a move. Somehow, I don't know, the strength of God. I couldn't take it anymore. Like, I just found all this strength of 3 men. I managed to physically get him off of me, even though I felt like my light was about to go out. I just had that burst of strength. And I got out of the grip, and I just tried to just rip his head off. And that's when it stirred up my son. I got the phone out of his hand, and I tried to run out the front door barefooted. He got a hold to me and pulled me by the back of my shirt. So then we tuggled some more. I remember running towards the window, tossing the phone out the back window, and then from the top floor, and then running down the stairs to go grab the phone. And I can recall him jumping out the top floor window, literally like a Superman, jumping out the top floor window. It was raining outside. I get to the backyard from the bottom steps. He gets to the yard from the top window, and we are fighting in the rain, in the darkness, like 2 maniacs. I could, he got the phone away from me. At this time, I'm over it. I lost all hope. Let him have it. I'm just done. And I walk in the house wet, bruised, 2 black eyes, like blood running from my nose. And my son said to me, "Mommy, why didn't you just listen to him?" And that is when I knew it was over for me. At this point, I'm like, you know what? No more. The next day, he went off to work, and I sprung into action. I got the kids, and I just grabbed them with just the clothes on our back. Let's go. We went, and we got into the streets, and I went to a payphone, and I called my mother, and I said to her, I'm coming to your house. And she said, "Come on." And I never turned back. And I never regretted it. I never regretted it. But it wasn't over, people. You know what it takes. You know the drama you go through when you leave a narcissist. You might want to tune in for the next part.